Hello and welcome to the 2023 Scary Goat Story for Christmas Time. This year's story is by me, called Trouble at the Old Lighthouse. Alexander had set out on the high seas at a certain point in his life when two primal emotional states refused to let him rest. The first being the feeling of deep seated boredom, that feeling that you will never find contentment in life without suddenly making a drastic change to your situation. The second was the need for adventure that could only be satiated by tempting fate to disprove your own feelings of immortality. Although now relatively uncommon, Alexander decided that the remedy for his particular ailment could only be found far from land. Once his mind had been made up, he set out with the singular goal of landing a spot on a fishing vessel. When he did eventually convince an outfit to take him on, he had a rough go of things at first. The work was hard, especially since he was the oldest of the rookies on board. However, over the course of a couple voyages, he had learned the ropes and actually started to thrive. Alexander was still considered low rank, but he had earned the respect of the others and was seen as reliable and capable by his crewmates. He knew that he was earning a great reputation, which made him extremely confused one morning when he made the observation that the sunrise looked extra red that day, and everyone in earshot seemed to give him the side eye and ignore him. He brought this observation up a few times, and all of the seasoned hands either looked away, spit on the ground, but they all went out of their way to not respond to him. One older fellow did mutter, "Sailors take warning," to himself as he made the sign of the cross. Alexander knew enough at that point to not push the subject, so he let it drop fairly quickly. But the rest of the crew avoided speaking to him for the rest of the day as much as they could. It seemed that all of his questions were answered that night when they were struck by a fierce storm. They faced ocean swells that dwarfed their increasingly insignificant vessel. They were pounded by rain, blasted by wind, and at the mercy of Poseidon himself. They were violently tossed into the inky pitch darkness, which was only interrupted by brief but intense flashes of lightning. When Alexander witnessed a couple of his crewmates get thrown into the abyss during the chaos, he bravely tied a rope around his waist and fought his way to the deck in hopes of saving them. He made his way out, holding a life ring and a life preserver, but as he made his way to the railing, he didn't notice the massive swell that was about to swallow his ship whole. Alexander woke up on a rocky beach with almost no memory of what had just happened. Every breath and movement was a painful undertaking, and he could only remember brief images of being thrown into the ocean while his ship rolled over. He felt where the rope had been tied around his waist and found only bruises and rope burns. The rope must have broke during the chaos as the ship went down. He did notice that he had the life jacket inflated around his neck, which must have kept him afloat and alive until he washed up shore. After he was satisfied that he was not seriously injured, Alexander decided to investigate his surroundings. He noticed that the beach was pretty barren except for some debris. This appeared to be a small, rocky island without much of anything on it, except for the large old lighthouse that was directly in the center. Alexander had assumed that in a world of GPS and satellite communications, an old lighthouse like this would have been abandoned at best. But the stereotypical white and black striped old-timey White House appeared to be well maintained, even though there were no signs that there was currently anyone here. Maybe, thought Alexander. Someone comes through here periodically to maintain the place. They must have just been here because all the vegetation around the building was neatly and shortly cropped. Alexander walked up to the door and found it tightly shut, but fortunately unlocked. The door did put up a lot of resistance as he pushed it open, but it did slowly give in with a long and drawn-out creaking noise. He let himself in and stood for a moment to let his eyeballs adjust to his new dark surrounding. When he heard something fall to the ground with a loud clank. "Hello? Hello? Is anyone there? Hello?" Getting no response, he ventured in a bit further, even though he felt an oppressive sense of foreboding. As he slowly made his way to the center of the building, he looked up and clearly saw someone looking down at him from the top of the stairs. "Hello? Who's there?" His only response was a disgruntled sounding "Bah!" and the mysterious figure disappeared into the darkness. Desperate for help, Alexander mustered all of his strength to climb up the stairs. When he reached the top landing, he was shocked to find nothing except the lighthouse assembly, along with a table containing some old paperwork, including an old journal. Alexander started to page through the old diary in search of clues that might lead him to the identity of the person he had seen earlier, or at least find a lead on how to contact someone for help. May 7th. I arrived here near dawn. My job is to help the senior caretaker, a grumpy old goat named Roger, keep this lighthouse. So far, I have found him to be ill-tempered and short on patience. I suppose that solitude will do that to you. Hopefully, once I prove that I can pull my weight around here, he will warm up to me. Alexander heard something crash downstairs with a loud thud. He grabbed the journal and went to investigate. A quick search downstairs turned up nothing except Alexander's need for some rest. He found a bedroom containing a firm but dusty mattress. He laid down to read another few passages in the journal as he drifted off to sleep. June 12th. That old goat Roger won't cut me any slack. No matter how hard I work, there's Roger staring at me with fierce disapproval. When I strive for perfection, I'm not working fast enough. When I go fast enough, it's not done well enough. Of course, his work is always done meticulously with the perception that being a lifelong master of your trade will bring you. The grounds are always perfectly kept, but that is in his nature. I'm trying to adapt, and he just cannot deal with that. July 21st. I can't believe it. I think that old goat tried to murder me. I was scrubbing the landing at the top of the stairs. I was on my hands and knees scrubbing when something hit me from behind. Had I not already been on all fours, I would have tumbled down the stairs to my demise. But I managed to catch myself in short order. Naturally, when I confronted Roger, he was not in the least bit concerned about my welfare. He barely acknowledged my presence, as is his nature. All he had to say was, "Bah!" and then he went back to what he was doing. Alexander woke up the next day feeling refreshed, but uneasy. Throughout the night, he could swear that he heard someone, or something, moving around, along with a strange clop, clop, clop noise. The entries in the journal didn't help his state of mind either, for when he woke up, Alexander could have sworn that someone had been tugging at his shirt. He also had the uneasy feeling of being watched. He decided that he had to shrug that off and try to find some food if he was going to recover his strength and keep his mental state from degrading any further. He had found a small kitchen, and there were still some cans in the pantry that looked outdated but still edible. Now he just had to find some sort of can opener. He searched the kitchen high and low. He got down on his hands and knees to search a surprisingly deep bottom cupboard. He got down, stuck his head in, and was suddenly struck from behind. The force drove his upper body into the cabinet and sent pots and pans flying. As the world was getting dim, he could have sworn that he heard someone mutter, "Bah!" Then, an ominous clop, clop, clop sound as he drifted out of consciousness. While he was out, he had visions of looked like an old man with a long, light, white beard and horns that the devil himself would have been proud of. In his vision, he was in the place of the junior caretaker, the one who had written the journal. He was working on something when Roger appeared from behind and clubbed him in the back of the head. He fell to the floor and rolled over to see this Roger dive at him and try to strangle him. Alexander woke up with a start. He was still on the kitchen floor next to the cabinet. He got up, but was still feeling woozy, on top of already being sore from his previous mishaps. He knew that someone or something did not want him in this lighthouse. He started to make his way out of the building, unsure of what to do next. As Alexander approached the door, he heard a clear "bah" from behind him. He turned around and saw a very handsome goat walk out of the shadows. The goat stood there and just stared at Alexander. Alexander said, Roger? Upon hearing his name, Roger walked up and nuzzled his hand. Alexander pet him a bit and said, "Do you know how to get help?" The old goat turned about and said, "Bah!" and started to slowly walk away. Alexander followed Rogers, and as he was led through his own passageway out of the lighthouse. As soon as they got outside, Roger lost interest in the man and started grazing. Alexander was dumbfounded. Could this actually be the senior keeper who was mentioned in the journal? The old goat? The one who kept the grounds meticulously groomed? As he was pondering what to do, Alexander noticed something shiny in the grass. He bent over to examine what it might be, when suddenly Roger rammed him from behind. He fell to the ground and heard a distinct "bah" as he once again drifted out of consciousness. Alexander woke up to the sound of a small engine running. He looked up to see a boat approaching shore. Inside were a couple of young men and a whole bunch of supplies. They noticed Alexander as soon as they got to shore and rushed to help him. "Are you okay?" one of them inquired. "Yeah, I was on a ship that was caught in that storm a few nights back. I washed up here and have been looking for a way to signal someone for help." "Oh, I'm glad we found you. We own this lighthouse and give tours. We had to leave our beloved lighthouse because of that storm. Well, all of us except Roger, of course. He won't leave. Say, have you met Roger? He's really friendly as long as you don't bend over in front of him." After making some other pleasantries and small talk and getting some food, they loaded up their boat and got ready to take Alexander back to civilization. During the journey, Alexander did have to ask about the mysterious journal. "Oh, that. Yeah, we had to fire that guy. He had an overactive imagination, and he was, well, kind of a creep. It's still entertaining to read his journal, though. He also had it out for Roger for some reason. That should have been enough of a hint to let him go right away." Which is a great segue to my next question. After you're finished recovering, would you like a job as a caretaker? Alexander didn't need to ponder the question for even a second before responding, "Yes, of course I would." The end.